Alright, today I was going to route out a window on a bow, and the thought of actually doing a short video on some clamped methodology came to mind. So that's what we're going to do today, short little video on various types of clamping and some tips that might help with that. Here you have my standard workbench, and in my workstation I have it nudged up to the table saw and another bench behind it with storage drawers for my bow making stuff. This bench is a home-built Roubo woodworking bench that was designed actually in the late 1700s. What you're going to notice here down this side are these 3/4 inch holes going down the side of the workbench, and over on the side is a leg hold vise. It runs the whole length there, and that is a really particularly good bow working vise. It's actually modeled after an old saddle maker's vise. Now, why are the holes of value? I'm going to show you that right now. Now, holding a bow down to run a router through the window hole there to keep it all flat and straight and not destroy your bandsaw blades really fast is kind of important to me, because bandsaw blades are expensive. So I'm going to show you what I do. I have these 3/4 inch dowels. I've placed two right here and here. So I take and I put my bow in between them like that. You see that? Now the bow's flexible. So what I'm going to do is take this dowel here. I'm going to pull this bow down and place that dowel in. And now you see that bow is held fast in there with no actual physical clamps pushing down on it. You can go both ways with a router, and it's held, and nothing gets in the way of managing your router. I use a fairly large router, and if you try to clamp here and here, well, the bottom one's okay, but this one's going to get in the way of the upper part of the router. So a simple method of clamping without using actual clamps. All right? You can do this with all kinds of things, but it works really good on the bow. That's why I use it, and it's dead steady. All right, now, other clamping methods. Now, this bow has overlays on it. It is a curved riser. It's not flat, which makes clamping more difficult. So when you make your curved riser, the piece, the scrap that comes off the blank, you save that, and you take that blank, and this is duct taped, and so it's the same shape as the riser curve, but I put in a piece of rubber inner tube on the inside of it and tape it in place. Because it's only bandsaw, it's rough and all that. So when I put my glue on my overlays, I place them down. Now this centers on there, and when you're going to clamp this, it keeps the curve, presses into the inner tube, and makes a really good seam. All right, now the actual clamping itself, I use homemade clamps. I use these clamps. They're just made out of 1/4 inch steel because aluminum was too expensive. I have a nut welded on the inside here. That's the thread for a lag bolt. You can buy at any hardware store. We just bolted on another nut and a washer, welded them in place, and now I have it clamped, and of course that's going to go down underneath there. I wouldn't be using this clamp, obviously. And you can place, for clamping, I use clamp spacers, and it has aluminum on one side. You can get those at a hardware store. It's just thin stuff. And you can put it here, and you're going to place your clamps there. And when these clamps clamp, and they're pinned with a bolt underneath, when you clamp, this gives you uniform straight clamping, and consequently a much better glue. And when you clamp, it doesn't cause the face laminations to want to twist. Some of you won't have this, and you're going to want to use C-clamps. All right? Now, if you're going to use C-clamps, something you have to actually remember is C-clamps apply a huge amount of force. Like this 8-inch clamp probably put down 4,000 pounds per square inch pressure if you crank it too hard, and it will squeeze all the glue out. So you have to crank it firm. See the glue, once the glue is oozing out from the joint, and you wipe it and it's flush, don't go any further. Now the next thing you have to remember about C-clamps is they apply a circular force with the piece here, and consequently it wants to twist. So when you put your other clamp on, you rotate it the other direction, so the forces are countering each other and it'll stand to keep your lamination in one place, because they will slip under pressure. You put it in the box to heat the overlays, and you come back and it's shifted over, and maybe you didn't, it might not matter, but it might. So you need to rotate those. All right, and that's with the big C-clamps. C-clamps are mandatory pretty much for doing tips on a bow, and most of people know that. Okay, so when you do this, you put one with the handle this way on this side, and then you're going to put the other one the other way, and that's going to keep your tip overlays squared up better. Now, one thing you can also do with another clamp that's highly useful is a squeeze clamp, and if you have a couple of these, that would be good, because you put your laminations on in place, you can squeeze this clamp, hold those overlay laminations in place on each side, and then clamp down, and that'll keep them from shifting. So if you're using C-clamps, I recommend you have some large squeeze clamps. All right? And, you know, it's worth making these clamps. This clamp here belonged to the original bowyer that had this business before my dad inherited it back in 1963. And these clamps are still useful, just made out of aluminum with a Allen head screw in it. And they work beautifully. I use them a lot because they're light and easy to use. All right, now, another way of clamping is with pneumatic clamps. For example, your laminations need to be really uniform, and you can make the forms that go in here, so when you glue in the bow form, this gets clamped on. You take some neoprene lined fire hose. You can make plugs out of wood and put the little air thing that goes into tires into it. And so you're going to take that. This particular hose is used for making action with lots of laminations. Anyway, you can see that that goes in there. This is clamped down to the form, and the pneumatic clamp now is the hose, and you put in 60 to 70 pounds of pressure. That expands and presses all the laminations into place nicely. Pretty easy to do. It is recommended to put a piece of sheet metal in here to help smooth it out, but I found that really doesn't matter. I've done it both ways and it's fine. Pneumatic hose has all kinds of uses, and I'm sure you can creatively think about it. I have my lamination form, which this goes in. It's all stacked up, clamped in place, and just hit it and it's there. But you have to check your hose ends every time to make sure no bubbles are coming out, or you will lose pressure. One other thing here, these pieces here are useful in a number of ways. If you're wrapping a bow, having the little tapers cut on the overlay, this one doesn't fit this bow, but it goes on like this, and then when you wrap it, the elastic comes right up here on this, and the glass is extended past here a bit. If you put it out like this, then the glass jams up against the end. So you put it here, have the glass extend a bit, and then you take care of your bow. And this is pulled down with these clamps, okay, in the bow form. Now, very useful, all right, and these have their place, the curved one, and sometimes you want a long straight one. For example, here we're putting a long overlay. The clamp only goes to here, so you have a few inches that won't have enough pressure having one that's a little longer, this will go on, and then you can apply pressure to the outside as well, uniformly all the way down, and you have better glue joints. So having a variety of these made is very useful. And if you make different types of risers, you can change your riser shape quite a bit. Creatively, you'll have to make different ones for every type of riser because you will have different lengths. Pretty simple stuff. Anyway, just thought we'd share that.